Hi, I have a big announcement to make for you all, or at least a huge set plan idea of what I think I want to do next here in the new future. Now, before I give away this big announcement here, right? Before I spoil the beans and everything here, just note that this may not fully come to pass, but it's still a huge idea that I have in my head. So first things first, folks. Before I give away any of this, right? I'm sure as you folks have know, if you've been on the channel here for a good minute or so, I have been doing what I like to call dementia music reviews. I've done a couple of these now. So far, I've done up to like six of them, I think, so far. I started off with doing All the Grand Memories of All the Lovely Years, by Dante Timberwolf around 2 or so years ago. And then around next coming February or whatever, right, somewhere in February of that next year, I did Everywhere at the End of Time. And then I went ahead and did like a reaction visualized video of someone that did Nowhere at the Millennium of Space, Redux, a visualized version of it, sort of basically. And then I went ahead and did Everywhere But the Center of Your Mind, which is basically like Everywhere at the End of Time, but with dementia. Not dementia, depression, excuse me. And then we did The Grand Decline, which was a massive free trilogy part that I decided to go ahead and do to cover everything on that whole project and everything. And then shut up, phone. And then recently, I just did Grandiose Recollections and Beautiful Years that I've done as well, which is basically a redux version of all the grand memories of all the lovely years. But I decided here that instead of just doing another cover based album, which I usually do from time to time, I look at an album and I make a discussion on it. I talk about the art cover and everything. I decided to go ahead and possibly do my very own fan project. Yeah, my very own Everywhere at Dinner Time fan project. I'm a huge, passionate fan for this weird type of music, and I'm kind of a huge sucker for this weird type of genre and everything. And I like to study, from time to time to kind of get a feel on some things and everything on some parts, and maybe to point some things out here and everything. And so I figured instead of just doing, another typical review cover that I do where I talk about what the album's about or just talk about the art cover, point out some tracks or whatever, and then go from there. I figured to go ahead and maybe spice some things up. Now, as I said before, this isn't fully official. This might not even ever happen, But I feel like I am confident enough to say and to look at myself and say that I think that it's something that I'm willing to take, that I'm willing to do, and that I'm willing to push forward towards and everything. I plan on doing this fully on my own, at least most of the time. I want this to be fully on my own, complete solo. I don't want this to be a group project or anything because I feel like 9 times out of 10, group projects kind of fall apart or crumble away in a sense. I'm seeing with Dante Timberwolf back when he was in the fandom and everything, how some projects weren't officially, complete all the way and everything. And even in some MLP horror AUs I've seen before, there'll be some parts that'll be missing and everything, but I'll mainly skip those because I like to. Whenever I make content on the channel, I like to have at least a full story or at least the parts all the way up to, to be continued. I don't like to jumble around between, part one, then part three, then part whatever, I feel like it makes it a bit more confusing and everything. And I just overall prefer to at least either have a full story or a project that's fully done rather than, partially done or scattered about and I have to look specifically in different areas for the next part over, But it's not too big of a deal, it's just my personal preference here and everything. So So how am I exactly gonna do this? Right? How am I gonna make this project here? First things first, though, which is probably gonna be the easiest and most intriguing to me, is the art covers. So how I plan on doing this is basically going to be two representations, or at least two of what it's inspired by, two things. Mainly, All the Grand Memories of All the Lovely Years by Dante Timberwolf, which is one of my favorite fan albums of the Caretaker fandom and everything. That's still one of my most favorite fan projects that Dante has done and everything. And also the Grand Declined as well, because how can you not, with a little bit of sprinkles of everywhere at the end of time, on there and everything in terms of format or everything. I do plan on, I can't say too much as of now, as I don't want to really spoil anything too much. And plus it's like barely even scratched the surface. It's like 5% done, whatever, in terms of full completion, I guess, percentage, whatever, because I haven't even really done anything, but I have fought very heavily on this, and I fought of this for a very long time. The only thing I will say as of now is that if I do continue this, I plan on having this be in 3 acts, similar to what the Grand Decline was and everything, in a sense. I'm gonna have Act One, which is basically the awareness side and everything. Well, music's coherent in a sense, and you can understand everything. Act Two, which is the post awareness, the sweet hellish confusion and gobbled up jumbled noises all over the place and everything. And then Act 3, which is what I call the Oblivion side, or Void side, if you will. So basically, to put in preference of everywhere at the end of time, in a sense, Act 1's going to be through Stage 1 to Stage 3, in a sense. Act 2's going to be Stage 4 and 5. And Act 3 is going to just be Stage 6, just to get a bare idea of what I plan on going here with this. Any of the songs that I'm gonna go ahead and do, I plan on doing at least on my own. As of now, if there's singing, I plan on doing my own singing myself as of well. And I plan on, doing my own musical instruments in a sense or whatever. I figured that since Jamie's been doing his music for a good minute and everything, and since my friend Vipelion has been doing his music, and a bunch of my other friends, since they have been doing their own music, I figured, you know what, let's go ahead and give this a shot. Maybe. Let's see how this could possibly go here, whatever. You know. I I don't know how it's exactly going to go exactly. The only most difficult thing that I can think of, because I'm not really a music magician or whatever, okay? This isn't going to be like some Caretaker, James Whelan Kirby thing or anything like that. And this isn't going to be no freaking Grand Declined either, okay? It's not going to be the definitive of the Grand Declined, I don't want this to be, I mean, I still want it to be like a masterpiece, but I don't want it to be the most insane, because it's not gonna be, okay? It's just not. But I want to dip my toes into this finally, and since I've been thinking heavily on this, and I've been thinking this for a good minute, since I've been thinking on this, and I've really put a lot of thought into it, I figured it's about time to let you folks know and to give this a shot and to see where this really takes us. If I decide, that is, I'm the reason I say it's not fully like a yes or no confirm or anything is that I'm still kind of debating on it, myself or anything. But the more I think on it, the more inspiration I get on it, and the more I just want to go ahead and do it. The only main difficult thing that I can really see myself struggling with, and that I may need help with down the road, is the post awareness stuff, and not like the white noise stage 6 post awareness where it's just white noise. I'm sure I can figure that out, along with the clarity music and things slowly getting distorted or whatever. Maybe partially with stage 3 or whatever, but with like something like stage 4 or 5, the advanced post awareness stuff and everything, I may need a bit of help with that unless I figure it out on my own. It's a bit tricky here, and I'm not gonna have AI freaking do any of this either, because it doesn't feel as genuine or whatever. But yeah, if anything, I might just do the covers, honestly, and then if someone wants to do the music, around that time, then I guess I'll go ahead and let them, whatever. But yeah, as of now, I plan on doing this fully on my own, completely solo. I have no idea how this is gonna go exactly. I have no idea if this is even gonna work or not, but you know what? I want to give it a shot, and I figured, to really go big on this. I'm going to take my time with this, as much time as I need. I'm not going to set a date on anything, If it happens, it happens, So I'm not going to set myself a date. I'm not going to set myself on an expiration time crunch or whatever, because I'm going to need a lot of time and everything. And I know it sounds a bit tricky or kind of risky to go ahead and, do this, but I want to dip my toes in, and I already have some idea visions of what I want the music to be like and the art covers and everything, and even some of the descriptions, but I need to actually put the effort in and everything. So yeah, I know this is a very big step for me and everything. Again, I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but you know what? I just want to go ahead and give it a shot. See what the heck happens. Because I genuinely love the Caretaker fandom. It's why I do the Dementia music reviews. From time to time and everything. And it's why I like to look over them and kind of talk about them and everything. Because it's something that I am generally passionate about and very curious on. But there's only so much fan albums that you can cover and talk about and everything. So I figured maybe this time around, instead of just doing another typical one, well, the same format and everything, I figured why not this time around to spice things up a bit and just to see where it goes from there. So, yeah. But anyway, that's basically all for this video here. I just wanted to give you folks a surprise here and everything. Again, I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but you know what? If I decide to take the leap in this, I'm going to take the leap on this. But I'm curious to know, what do you folks think of this idea? I I have no idea, but you know what? It's kind of worth the shot. Like I said, the more I think on it, the more I talk about it and everything, the more I get motivated to actually try and go ahead and do this. And since some of my friends have been doing their own music and everything, and this is what I meant by those years ago, James, when I said I was thinking of doing my own music. This is what I was thinking of since then, but it was kind of like a little small idea, like a theory, like a little maybe kind of thing. But now that I'm actually, putting more thought into it and everything, it's like, you know what? Maybe we can give this a shot. Let's see what happens. Do everything fully on my own. The art cover, the descriptions, the freaking how the stages are formatted or whatever, the acts, the track songs, everything mainly the full piece, like making a sandwich, basically. Because you know what? If the sandwich isn't going to be complete or whatever, at least it's my doing of the sandwich. Instead of having to wait for someone else to get a piece of that sandwich, in a sense. If the sandwich isn't complete, at least it's my own sandwich instead of working with someone else along with me to help make the sandwich, basically, is all I'm trying to say. And I feel like I would feel overall better in the end if I ended up letting go or things not working out, that at least it was at the end of the day just my own doing of it instead of someone else along with me for it. But anyway, folks, that's basically it for this video here. So yeah, just wanted to give you folks a little surprise here and everything. So yeah, what do you folks think of this idea here? It's gonna take a long while. I'm definitely gonna say for sure on that. It's gonna take a long while. I'm gonna take my sweet ass time with this. I'm not gonna rush it. We're not gonna push through on it. We're definitely gonna take some time on this if I even decide to go forward with it, that is. But yeah, I always like to give something to things that I'm passionate about, and when it comes to something like this, it just feels very genuine. But anyway, folks, that's basically it for this video here. So with all of that being said and out of the way, thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you folks don't miss out on a future video or posts I make in the future, and that you can always be kept up to date with the channel here. And lastly, folks, if you have any requests or suggestions that you want me to go ahead and do, feel free to tell me down in the comments below. But anyway, folks, thank you all so much for watching. So be sure to leave a like, leave a comment, hit subscribe for more. And I will see you all sooner or later. Bye bye, everyone.